Hello, Aaron Kubitz, personal trainer at Functional Aesthetic CC. We're helping average guys perform better in their lives inside and outside the gym. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the benefits of training various different strength training styles, specifically the hybrid athlete style of training. Now, the typical hybrid athlete training style is basically blending aerobic training with strength training. So in the past, it was thought that you could not excel at both strength training and aerobic endurance training. However, in recent years, there's been guys like Alex Villeda, Nick Baer, and several other guys that have adopted this hybrid athlete methodology where you're basically trying to be super strong and also have great endurance as well. So having a guy who's 290 pounds running a 4-minute mile or competing in 100-mile long-distance runs, and then also, lifting 400-pound deadlifts, 400-pound squats, things like that. Alex Villeda actually competed in a Ironman triathlon, and then just like a month before that, deadlifted 700 pounds in a powerlifting competition. So it's definitely possible. Now, are you going to be at the elite level, like setting records in the marathon or long distance events? Probably not. However, you can be far above average in both categories if you train the proper way. Now, that's the basic hybrid strength training model. And while I do like to train a lot of different styles of training, keep more a balanced approach to training, the focus of this video is going to be more on hybrid strength. So the way I see it, there's four primary styles of strength training, right? So you'd have your muscular endurance training, you're going to have your hypertrophy training, which is like your bodybuilding style training, and you're going to have your strength training, you're going to have, which would be kind of like powerlifting training, right? And then you'd have your power training. Now, powerlifting is called powerlifting, but it's actually not powerlifting. It's actually focused on maximal strength development, right? Because power is actually force times acceleration. So things like Olympic lifting, sprinting, throwing the shot put, throwing the discus, the javelin, throwing a baseball, things like that are all examples of power. Also, when you're jumping, doing a slam dunk in basketball, the hurdles, there's a lot of power things that are related to track and field or team sports, okay? So that would be what I would consider power training. So in this video, I'm going to go over the benefits of the various different styles of training, and then in a subsequent video, I'm going to go over the benefits of combining all of these training styles together and how to do that optimally to get the best results from all of these different training styles. Because a lot of times people pigeonhole themselves into one area that they're naturally good at, and they leave a lot of potential fitness gains on the table by not capitalizing on some other areas. And even sometimes, unless you're trying to be like the world's strongest man or the best long distance runner in the world, you would actually better be served by incorporating a variety of different training methods into your workouts, because if you don't, maybe you're going to be extremely fit in one area but be deficient and not actually completely healthy overall. Okay, there's actually an example of this. Years ago, I was training at a gym, and they do have this group fitness class thing where they do the circuit training stuff, and there's like light weights, low rest periods, and they go around the circuit, right? So it's almost kind of a more anaerobic style of training. And there's this guy, and he had competed in this all-night running event where you just run as long as you can for like 24 hours or whatever, right? And the guy was able to run for like 24 hours straight, but he's completely gassed out in this 45-minute, circuit training session, right? Because he had extremely good aerobic capacity, but his anaerobic capacity was severely lacking. So we don't want to have that happen, okay? So to start off, the first area that we want to focus on would be muscular endurance. Okay, so muscular endurance, the benefits of this from a weightlifter's standpoint, and I'm not talking about aerobic endurance, I'm talking about muscular endurance, all right? So for a complete beginner, doing push-ups might actually be considered a strength training exercise, right? But for somebody who's been doing lifting for a while or been doing calisthenics for a while, once you get, so you're doing, 25, 30, 45, 50, 100 push-ups or whatever, it's more of an endurance exercise. It's no longer providing that strength stimulus, okay? So one of the benefits of muscular endurance training is that you are going to be building up the strength of your tendons and ligaments, which will then help to prepare you to withstand larger loads in subsequent in more intense training styles, like a bodybuilding style or a powerlifting style, or even a Olympic style of lifting. Okay. The other thing that's going to do is going to help you to ingrain that neuromuscular conditioning, to ingrain the movement pattern, that mind-muscle connection, to really drive home proper technique on how to do the exercises. A lot of guys, especially young guys, they'd like to go into the gym and just start trying to lift as much weight as they possibly can. So I heard a story from, actually I think it was Brett Contreras. He's a well-known guy in the fitness community, particularly with strength training for women, and he has a PhD in exercise science and all that and everything, right? But he was talking about when he was 20 years old, he was at the gym and he started out, the first week, and he was, warming up with like 95 pounds on the squat, and then 115 and then 135. And then a couple months later, he was doing 225 in the squat. And a couple months after that, he was doing, a set of 5 with 275. And he thought he was doing full range of motion, right? Well, one day this older gentleman, who definitely looked like he knew what he was talking about, he was extremely muscular, big, walks by and just comments, as he's finishing this set of 275 for 5 reps, why don't you drop it down to 135 and, squat like a man, right, with full range of motion. So, Brett said he's decided to swallow his ego and go ahead and do this. And he noticed that his leg development, he almost like doubled the size in his legs and stuff by focusing on full range of motion, not focusing overall on how much weight he was lifting. And this is a very common misconception. And it's like, if you're on the farm, you got to do whatever you can to heave that weight up into the back of the truck. But when you're doing bodybuilding, for example, a classic example of this would be Tom Platz. If you don't know who Tom Platz is, look him up. But Tom Platz was famous for using full range of motion with this stuff. When you do stiff leg deadlifts, where you'd go and stretch the hamstrings to complete extension and then reverse that movement and move that weight. Now, over time, you do want to progressively overload and you want to add more weight. You want to be challenging yourself, but in the beginning, you want to be focusing on developing that full range of motion to allow yourself to get the most out of it. The last thing that muscular endurance training is going to do for you, it's going to help you to increase your metabolic efficiency. Okay, metabolic efficiency meaning the ability to utilize carbohydrates and fats for fuel and to deliver them efficiently to the muscles. A lot of times people don't a lot of the strength gains that people initially get in the first couple of months of training is a combination of developing better movement patterns, better recruitment. Their nervous system gets more used to it. They develop more proficiency in the movement itself. And then also their body is able to deliver the fuel substrates, the carbohydrates and stuff, more efficiently to the muscles so that they don't fatigue as quickly, and thereby able to produce more, do more reps, do more sets and stuff like that over time because they're getting more efficient at it. All right, so the next area that I want to focus on, and these are all going in chronological order as well. These are the order in which you would want to train your muscles to develop peak athletic performance. Okay, so the next area is hypertrophy training. Okay, hypertrophy is just a fancy way of saying building bigger muscles, particularly sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, or increasing the intramuscular fluid or the fluid around the muscles. That is generally delivered by doing a bodybuilding style of training, okay? So bodybuilding style of training is generally training that is done with higher volume, but not quite as high as the muscular endurance training. So whereas muscular endurance training might be anywhere from 10 to 20 reps or up to 90 seconds before fatigue, right? Or 60 seconds or above, right? Before muscular fatigue. Hypertrophy training is going to be more gauged at a moderate level of intensity. So anywhere between, let's say, 70% all the way up to maybe 85% of your 1 rep max and anywhere between 8 to 15 repetitions. Usually they say the sweet spot is about 8 to 12 repetitions. Now you can gain muscle doing any different variety of training as long as you're fatiguing within 90 seconds or less. However, this is generally the optimal place and the most efficient for your time for building more muscle, right? So if you were going to be doing so if you did like a bunch of sets of 3, right? You'd also have to rest longer in between. You'd probably have to do like 10 total sets. And so your time in the gym would be extremely long. And that's why, even though you can build muscle lifting really heavy weights, it's just not super efficient with your time, okay? And so that's why 8 to 12 repetitions is generally the standard for building more hypertrophy. So beyond that, what are the benefits of developing muscular hypertrophy, and why do we want to do that in this order: after muscular endurance and before traditional strength work? Well, number one, most people, obviously bodybuilders, the reason they're doing it is to improve their aesthetics, right? They're build bigger muscles, more balanced, well-developed muscles, right? So that their physique looks better, right? And beyond that, there is also the benefit of, if you have a bigger muscle, it doesn't mean it will be, but it has the potential to have more strength, right? So we all know guys who are skinnier who can lift more weight than a bigger guy, but that doesn't mean that the guy who's skinny, because there's a lot of things that actually factor into how much weight you can actually lift. There's things like, the ratio, for example, in the squat, the ratio between the length of your tibia and your femur, the muscle insertions. If you go back to like physics and stuff, and force couples and everything, in moment arms, right? So the further away from the axis the force is pulling on, the greater amount of force it's going to be able to, the greater amount of weight you're going to be able to move with the same amount of force. It's the same kind of principle as using a lever or having a longer wrench rather than a shorter wrench is going to be able to move more weight. So people who have tendons that insert at further away from the axis are going to be able to move more weight using the same amount of muscle force, right? So there's a lot of different things that come into that. But generally, if you have a bigger muscle, you're going to have more potential to generate maximal force, right? And you're also going to be getting, building more of that, tendon and ligament strength, so that when you do go and do this maximal efforts, when you're doing powerlifting and stuff, you're going to be less likely to injure yourself, to rip something, to tear something, to rupture the tendon, and so on and so forth. It's preparing you for more intense efforts, okay? And then, that's pretty much what I wanted to say about muscular hypertrophy, and then we'll go on to the benefits of muscular strength training. All right, so stage number 3 would be developing muscular strength, okay? And the benefits of this are obviously, in most strength training and any weight-bearing exercises, are going to increase bone density, right? But obviously, if you're lifting heavier weight, you're going to be increasing that to a greater degree. The other thing that you're going to be doing is going to be increasing myofibrillar hypertrophy, which is actually increasing the size of the actual muscle fiber. Whereas bodybuilding training tends to increase the fluid around the muscles, which increases the size of the muscle. Heavy lifting tends to increase the size of the actual muscle fiber, leading to a more dense, compact muscle, okay? So the other thing that lifting heavier weights is going to do is going to set the stage for the final stage, which should be developing muscular power. So one way that this has been explained to me is that, for example, if you have a rowboat, right, and you put a 25 horsepower motor on the rowboat is going to go a certain amount of speed, right? However, if you keep that rowboat the same size and then you put a 50 horsepower motor on it, it's going to go much faster, right? So when you're trying to develop speed, right? So a lot of times with track athletes or football players, soccer players and stuff like that, one of the foundational things you do before you start doing specific speed drills and speed work is to increase just general strength and conditioning. Because if you can keep the person, whereas with bodybuilding training, you're trying to get bigger, right? If you can get somebody, increase their muscle mass just enough. So if some people, they're like, oh, I don't want to gain any sort of mass, I don't want to get too bulky, right? A friend of mine told me back in high school that a friend of his decided to start running because she wanted to lose some weight. And then she noticed that her calves were getting bigger from all this running. And so then she didn't want to run because her calves were getting big. Well, here's the deal. Running and endurance training isn't a great stimulus for building more muscle. So if you are building muscle by running, you probably are meant to be that big and you shouldn't worry about it, okay? So with that being said, kind of losing where I was going with this, but with the strength training, if you can keep your muscle size or your body weight approximately the same, but increase the strength or the force capacity of the muscles, you're naturally going to be able to go faster, right? Because you have the same weight of body, but you can develop more force, so it's going to be able to go faster, right? Now, obviously, you have to train it so that you can produce that force as quickly as possible as well, because strength, when you're doing powerlifting, you don't worry about how fast you're moving that weight, just as long as you get it from point A to point B. Now, you're not trying to, as some people like to think that you're trying to do, purposely focus on going really slow with something. The weight is just moving slow because it's heavy, and so it's going really slow because of that. But otherwise, you're trying to move it very quickly. So you do want to have that general base of strength and conditioning there, okay? So now that we have an idea of why we want to build this maximal strength, now we can go on to the final piece, which is developing muscular power. Okay, piece number 4 is muscular power. So we had gone through the previous 3 stages, which was muscular endurance, hypertrophy training, and muscular strength. All these are setting the stage to generate the strength in the muscles and ligaments and the muscles and develop the proficiency in the movement patterns, so that when we are doing these lifts or exercises where we are generating force at a very rapid rate, that we're going to have a lower chance of tearing a muscle, rupturing a tendon, or something of that nature, okay? So decreased chance for injury, and also highest chance of developing optimal power. So sometimes people have, they have kids doing box jumps and stuff like that too early, or they're doing sprints and stuff, and that's fine, right? But if you haven't developed at least a baseline level of strength before that, you're actually setting yourself short on the amount of speed that you could develop in the long run. So people think, okay, well, if I build more muscle and stuff like that, it's going to slow me down and be too slow. Well, they actually had a Olympic sprinter race against a top level bodybuilder. He competed in the Mr. Olympia. I think it was actually Kevin Lebroni or something like that, was sprinting against, I don't know, it was Michael Johnson, or I don't know, one of these guys, right? And there was not that much difference between them. Literally, I think he got beat by like 3 feet or something like that. It was pretty close, even though the one guy was much larger, more muscular. And the reason for this is that a lot of times people who excel in sports like bodybuilding and stuff, or the ability to build more muscle, is because they have more of the type 2 or type 2A, type 2B muscle fibers, which are geared towards anaerobic activity. In other words, maximal force production, but they also fatigue very quickly. So building a little bit more muscle won't necessarily make you slower, and actually to build enormous amounts of muscle like a professional bodybuilder or something is going to take steroids, it's going to take insulin, human growth hormone, things like that, and it's going to require a lot of concerted effort on getting as big as possible, which is going to take way more time than the general person even has the time or the willingness to do. So don't worry about getting too big by lifting weights, because it's not that easy. That otherwise people wouldn't take steroids to try to get that big, because it's extremely difficult to get very large and lean doing for the average person, okay? There are some outliers who have really good genetics who can do it and stuff, but for the general person, it's not going to happen, okay? So with some other benefits of muscular power is obviously it's going to make you faster, be able to jump higher, you're going to be more agile, you're going to be more quick, right? So the people that this could benefit is people who are, say for example, you are a soccer player, right? And you want to be able to make changes in direction more quickly. You want to be able to sprint faster down the field. You are a wide receiver or something on a football team. Those people are going to benefit from this. Obviously, track athletes are going to benefit from power training. And then if you're doing Olympic lifting is actually very technical, and so just doing the drills to learn how to do Olympic lifting is extremely good for increasing joint mobility, flexibility, and range of motion in all your joints, so your ankles, your knees, your hips, your upper back, so improving your posture, your shoulders, your wrists. So it's not only going to be increasing the range of motion in those, and in your flexibility, but also the mobility, so the structural integrity of these joints as well. So they're not only going to be flexible and you have that range of motion, but you're also able to be more resilient, and those tendons are going to be less prone to injury, especially under high generating force very rapidly. And the other benefit of doing Olympic lifting or power type training is an increase in anabolic and fat burning hormones. So when you're doing sprint training, you're going to be increasing things like human growth hormone, testosterone, and your catecholamines, which are epinephrine, norepinephrine, or adrenaline and noradrenaline, which are both very potent fat-burning hormones. So while most of your training should be in more of a moderate range, and if you're like doing aerobic training, most of it should be in like the zone 2, right? Where you can carry on a conversation, you're not huffing and puffing and really out of breath, but you do want to do some of that training, especially as you're getting older and stuff, and you're producing less of these hormones naturally, where you're just going all out as fast as you can and getting into anaerobic zone. So maybe you can only, go as hard as you can, where you can only sustain that pace or whatever, or that level of intensity for like 10 seconds tops, and then take a couple minutes to recover, go and do it again, and that's going to really help to ramp up those fat-burning hormones. So that's why things like Olympic lifting and stuff are actually incredibly great for decreasing body fat, while also increasing that lean muscle mass as well. You look at, for example, the Chinese weightlifting team and stuff. These guys are oftentimes as lean as, professional bodybuilders and stuff, simply just because of the way that they're training and stuff. You can look at CrossFit athletes as well. That is a similar thing. They're very lean, very muscular, and it's very functional too, because you're able to move fast, move quickly, have that change in direction, speed, and agility as well. So this is something that I've been working on over the past year or so, really kind of diving into creating a program for my clients, which I call a hybrid strength program, kind of putting all these things together. And in my next video, I'm going to talk about some of the benefits of blending these different styles of training together into a single workout, and how that can actually help to accelerate your fitness and actually even cut down on the amount of time that it takes you to train and still get the benefits of doing a traditional, do your cardio, extra flexibility, strength training, and all that kind of stuff on separate days. So guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you found the information beneficial. And if you did, hit that like button. If you would like to see more content like this, go ahead and hit the subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. And we'll see you all next time for more health and fitness related information. Thanks guys.